Good afternoon, everyone. We have different time zones here, so good afternoon for this side of the world. We have, you'll meet him soon. We have Kellen actually joining us from LA. Different hours. Thank you for that. My name is Yoav, and I'm the Managing Director of Guesty in Asia Pacific. We're based here in Sydney. We're actually broadcasting now from our office in Surrey Hills. I'll speak a bit more about kind of the team and our operation here later on. But I want to welcome you all and thank you for joining us. It's the second session that we're doing that is related to the real estate industry, the real estate agencies, property investors, obviously property management companies. We see, especially in the last few months, a strong interest from the more traditional real estate agencies that are getting, it's not that they're getting involved in short-term rentals because they've been doing it for years, but we see much more discussions around the technology, the automation element, the data elements of it, and we would like kind of to continue this discussion, hence this second meetup that we're doing on this topic. I can also say on a more selfish note is that the more we hear and speak with real estate agencies, we see that we have much more to learn ourselves. So that's also a good opportunity for us to learn from the experts that are in the field. Speaking about kind of experts, we are lucky to have here a panel of smart, I call it a trifecta of brains, smart and super nice people. We have Kellen Cruz, the head of real estate in AirDNA. AirDNA, I'm pretty sure that most of you are familiar with AirDNA. AirDNA is a short-term rental data and insight company. Lots of data nuggets they bring with them, and Kellen will share and speak more about them in a few minutes. We have Avian Gutman, he's the founder and CEO of Padlifter. Padlifter is quite a large marketplace for short-term rental service providers. And Avian will speak today about some strong trends that kind of we see in the real estate or overall in the property investment world. And we also have, last but definitely not least, Rana Zhang. Rana is the general manager of Landnest Real Estate. She's also one of our key clients. Rana and her business, they are working both in long term, in short term. They combine the two, and she will share with us her experience and her thoughts about it. In terms of how it will go the next, probably less than an hour, but kind of the way that it will work, I'll say a few words. I'll keep myself very short because I would like to give the stage to our panelists. Each one of the panelists will go through his short presentation and explain more about their view on this world. We'll have then a panel discussion. We have a few questions that we prepared for our guests, and we also encourage you to type your question, which we'll bring up to them as well. So I want to kick off quickly and start with a more positive note. So we from our data, that's basically reservation across major booking platform, including Airbnb and Booking.com. Month on month, Australia shows signs of recovery. In October, Australia showed its highest reservation volume since March, so since since the beginning of when we got into the COVID era. And we saw 12% increase in reservation volume in October 2020 compared to September. So we're seeing month-on-month improvement. We see with the future reservation in the system, we see kind of a consistent growth all the way to January and February 2021. Now, summer is coming, and not surprisingly, we see that the booking increases. Every day that I pick my kids from school, the common discussion just behind the fence, we're now standing behind the fence for the kids to come. So the discussion between the parents is, did you manage to book? Where are you going? I can't find any booking, and I constantly just trying to see, where are they booking? Do we actually have clients there? You know, it's a good it's a good lead generation model if you want. But joke aside, you know, I'm sure that you feel it either on your own business or definitely kind of from a personal perspective that summer is definitely coming. I took a headline and a snippet from a recent article on Traveler. They were talking about staff shortage in some of the region in the domestic kind of part of the domestic tourism boom. Not sure who can resonate from the audience with this kind of quote, that it's like an ATM machine properties there, but you see kind of the flavor. We see from our data, we see that anything that it's near the coast, anything that is either outside of the city or sort of the urban holiday side of the city, like we see it in Surrey Hills, we see it in areas like Bondi and Manly. We see kind of that these areas are outperforming others. Now, this is also part of the interest, the growing interest that we see from real estate agency, from real estate professionals. We more and more getting into discussion and hear the term flexible rental solution, flexible inventory, anything around the offering different type of rents, long-term, short-term, mid-term. This is definitely something that one of the learnings that we got from COVID-19. We mentioned it in few of our meetups in the past as a strong theme that's coming with, and as part of it, we see the interest growing, and with the interest, especially in the discussion where we're involved, automation is key. As I mentioned before, and the real estate agents among you in the audience will agree, real estate agents, especially those outside of the cities, they've been doing holiday rentals for many, many years. What coming now into more what the main demand now that we're is around the technology part, how to sync between systems, how to automate. It has a lot to do with the guest request, etc. So real estate agencies and things that are relevant to them. I mentioned the flexible inventory. We'll hear from Evian shortly around the build to rent trend. And as I just mentioned, guests who are booking, it doesn't matter now, long, short-term, mid-term, they expect the level of service of a hotel, the comfort of home. So how does that impact the day-to-day operation? Quickly about kind of Guesty in this context. For those of you who are not familiar with us, we are a short-term rental property management platform, end-to-end solution. It was built by property managers for property managers. So basically trying to simplify the day-to-day work and to automate it as easy as possible. We are a one-stop shop in the sense that from one place you can connect to the main platform, to the main OTAs, and through different channel managers also to hundreds of different channels. We also operate a marketplace with a lot of third-party solutions, great solutions from smart home technology to energy efficiency to insurance to maintenance across the board. So the idea is to keep everything in one place. We are starting, one of the new things that we start kind of to support is a part hotel, boutique hotel, multi-units management. We see it also as a growing trend, especially within the urban space. But for our discussion, and these are my last few points before I'm handing it over to our speakers, we leverage and we provide data-driven insights to help our partners with their business decision, and automation is a key factor in it. So just to give a couple of insights, in Australia, the average nightly rate and average nightly stay are on the rise when we see it kind of compared to 2020, when we compare this year to last year. So even though that there are less booking, 40% less booking than last year, still it's the COVID era. When we talk about the average nightly rate and stay, these are actually increasing. One of the insights or the tips that come to it is how to utilize automation tools such as revenue management tools. Basically, how can you get most out of it? How you can capture early reservation, how you can price it accordingly, how can you apply discounts. We see a strong trend of last minute booking. How do you manage to take this on board and maximize the yield out of it? So these are kind of the type of things that we help our partner with. Another element is the guest service and the guest experience. We have here a case study from one of our enterprise partners, larger partners, that kind of looked into all the guest messaging and how much automation saved them in terms of time and in terms of cost to the business. That's also a key element. How do we lower, or how do I assist to lower the operational cost in that context? And variety of tips around there, from providing relevant information. Relevant information, by the way, kind of this week, in the last few days, with the opening of the Victorian border and very soon the Queensland border, what are the guidelines that are expected to give to guests, that you need to give to guests? So there is a lot of work around the communication. Guests are expecting much more communication that it's related to COVID. If before COVID it was more around access, Wi-Fi, these type of things, now in addition to that, it's much more relevant to their safety, to cancellation policies, etc. One of the things that we do is we have 24/7 guest communication services. That's another service that we provide and gain a strong interest in from real estate agents in terms of how to assist with support around the clock, off hours, how to improve the level of bookings, how do you take care in cancellation in real time. So this is also something that we do with our clients. And there's more to come as we are using more AI, machine learning, to introduce more elements into the decision-making process. So more to come at that front. And that's pretty much from the Guesty aside. You left the details at the end, but as I said, it's less about us and more about what our guests wants to kind of to share with us. So I want to start with AirDNA and Kellen from AirDNA.
First of all, Yoav, thank you so much, and Guesty, thanks so much for hosting and for inviting us to join. And thank you to all the guests out there across the world. As Yoav mentioned, I'm the head of real estate at AirDNA. I'm very excited to be here today. Of course, we'll get into some data insights that will hopefully help you all make decisions, particularly in this new crazy world that we live in. But first, I'll start with a couple of details about AirDNA. For those of you who have never heard of us before, we are a data company. We track 10 million properties across the world in about 120,000 markets. Our goal is really to offer end-to-end solutions for property managers, real estate investors, destinations, tourism boards, and hosts. And we do that in a variety of ways, as you can see here, everything from property selection and choosing your next great investment to listing optimization and competitive benchmarking. The way we source our data is unique. So we scrape data from Airbnb and VRBO. We scrape those 10 million properties every day. And then we also have channel managers and PMS data solutions providers who we share data with. And by doing that, we're able to get 750,000 unique insights on those properties. And that helps us to train and learn our algorithm. So let's jump to a bit of data here. So prior to COVID, you had a hotel and motel industry that was doing about $600 billion a year in revenue. And Airbnb had come on the scene very hard. VRBO had come on the scene hard to compete with that. As of January of 2020, about 15 cents on every dollar that was spent on a hotel was spent on an Airbnb booking. So where are we today? So with these bookings, it's not quite the same as a hotel product. So a hotel product, you generally have 30 days available. They're either booked or they're not booked. Where Airbnb and VRBO properties are unique is that the host can make the property unavailable to live in it themselves or perhaps to do maintenance. And so what our technology really strives to do is to get that granular detail so that we can know which nights are available or which nights are booked, and which nights, the nights that are unavailable are blocked off, and we do not count those toward the performance that we track. And that's really been the key technology that we've developed to be able to find insights and help property managers, hosts, and real estate investors to do great at their job and to enhance performance. So jump to this slide here. As many of you know, Airbnb was the hot topic coming into 2020. They had done $38 billion in booking revenue in 2019. And then the shock kind of hit the whole world and obviously made that a different story. So let's talk pre-COVID for a minute. What were people who were booking hotels or booking accommodations thinking about? Mostly three things: price, location, and product. And as COVID has changed all of our lives, including how we live day to day and our nomadic work lifestyle today, it's also changed the behaviors of people who are making travel decisions. And now they're thinking a lot more about cleanliness and safety, and also travel restrictions for their guests and for the hosts themselves. So taking a quick look at bookings. So if we look at 2019 and index it against 2020, what we can see is just a huge drop off. And you can see this mostly across the world. And in the blue, you can see the Oceania portion, which is dominated by Australia and New Zealand. And it's no different kind of across the world. Everybody had to change their behaviors and change their travel because of the pandemic. So then if we take the Oceania demand and look at that in the same type of index, you can see just a huge drop off when the world kind of shut down. And then it started to pick up as we moved into the summer here in the US, the winter in Australia, and then a little bit more fear of the pandemic and its spread. And then as you can see, as we came into September and October, there was surging demand again. So what does the data tell us about destinations and cities themselves? It tells us for sure that people are less willing to travel to big cities and urban areas, and they're much more willing to jump in the car and to go experience something maybe unique, something that they can get to within driving distance that doesn't require travel via airline, and also that allows people to get out of the house, get out of the home for a few months or a few weeks or even a few days. And what you can see here is that the demand for those cities that are kind of off the beaten path outstrips the demand for the big cities, in this case, Sydney and Christchurch. To dive a little bit deeper here, we can look at the city demand across Australia, and it's not a shock that you see a huge drop off in the blue in 2019 for the two main cities of Melbourne and Sydney. Meanwhile, you can see in the Blue Mountains and Brisbane even, and Cairns, that there's a much, much different demand. In fact, some places increased. Same across New Zealand. We can see a big drop off in Auckland, a bit of a drop off in Queenstown and Wellington. And then in some of those destinations, the bookings data show that clearly people have changed their behaviors and changed those destinations. So let's quickly look at the revenue changes. So what does this tell us about the revenue picture and overall travel behaviors? It really says and kind of speaks to the couple of slides before. Sydney, of course, you're seeing a huge drop off in revenue year over year, whereas in Wyong and Byron and the Blue Mountains, you see a much, much smaller, even maybe an increase in those annual revenue figures. Interestingly, and as you all have mentioned in the pretext, ADRs are kind of responding as you would imagine with scarcity. So as some of the bookings have come down and there's fewer listings available, hosts and property managers are using data to be able to boost revenue, and they're doing this with ADR. So as you can see, while there were those huge demand drop-offs, the ADRs have kind of held on. And as I close out here, I want to talk to a couple of trends that we're seeing, and Yoav had mentioned these too. We're really seeing length of stay changes. So before the pandemic, it was pretty clear that folks are staying on average, between 3 to 5 nights. And now we see a much, much different picture, particularly through the months of March to May. We can see that those longer nomadic stays where people were really wanting to get off the beaten path increased, and now it's normalized a little bit back to those times of February and March. Booking lead times, similarly, we've seen a very big difference here, a big change in that people are less willing to make a long-term decision, particularly as the spikes are happening and as there's fear of the pandemic. They're making much shorter booking windows, and many of the hosts have changed their strictness policy to allow this. And then quickly, I wanted to say, just on a data context, a bit of an infomercial here. AirDNA, one of the many products that we offer, provides that granular detail for real estate professionals, for investors who are looking to understand where and how to pick that next property. Go to our blog. We not only have an index there on basically where to find the best places to invest and a methodology to use. We can also allow you to enter an address anywhere in the world, and we'll give a 12-month breakdown of what the revenue ADRs look like for the future year. And sorry if I went over a few minutes. I want to thank you all for having me.
Thank you very much, Karen. Thank you. That's first of all, thanks for the data and the storytelling behind of it. I can say that from our end, we are heavy users of AirDNA, and a lot of our advice to our clients is based on your data and insights. So thank you very much for that. And I actually think that we actually owe you a few minutes in terms of kind of being thanks for that. Evian, go ahead.
Great. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Hi everybody. My name's Evian Goodman. Today I'm going to be talking about the build-to-rent industry from a real estate perspective. And we're going to discuss who it's targeting, what it looks like, and why it matters to real estate professionals. Before we dive into things, just a bit of background on myself. Over the last few years, I've involved myself quite heavily in the short-term rental industry. I'm the author of the definitive step-by-step guide to making money on Airbnb. I'm also the founder and CEO of Padlifter, which has now grown into the world's largest marketplace of short-term rental service providers. And more recently, I've just written my latest book, Coming Back from COVID, just to help small business owners recover from the impact and aftermath of the pandemic. Now, I suspect that there are a few people on this webinar for whom the concept of build to rent is entirely unfamiliar. However, for the purposes of clarifying what we're actually talking about today, build to rent refers to a residential development in which all apartments are owned by the developer, leased out to tenants, and managed by specialist operators. Now, this stands in contrast to the build-to-sell strata model that I suspect most participants on today's webinar have a more direct involvement with, whereby properties are purchased by individuals to be moved into by themselves or to be rented out as investment properties. Now, strictly speaking, the build-to-rent model encompasses a number of varied property types, including things like retirement villages, student accommodation, employment housing near amenities like hospitals and airports, as well as affordable housing. However, for the purposes of today's discussion, we're going to focus on build to rent in the form of apartment blocks or larger developments, purpose-built for rental occupation at market price. So just to add a little perspective to our discussion now, in the 2016 census found that of the 8.3 million households in Australia, 2.1 million, or 26% of them, were renting from private landlords. So when we talk about build to rent's encroachment into the Australian real estate landscape, this is the piece of the pie that's happening within. Now, there are many regulatory and tax barriers that are impeding the growth of build to rent in Australia. However, if Australia were to attract the level of institutional capital that it does in the US, we'd be looking at 30,000 new build to rent units constructed in Australia each and every year. And according to the Property Council of Australia, as of 2018, there were an estimated 14,600 units under consideration in Australia's national build-to-rent pipeline. So really all of this just gives us a bit of perspective on why we're even having this conversation to begin with. So now I'd like to focus a little more on the renter profile being targeted by build-to-rent. And the key takeaway here is really that the profile of the modern renter has matured around new lifestyle preferences, desired protections, and financial realities. So what are some of these? They're looking for additional amenities in sought-after locations. Home is just as much about lifestyle as it is about the physical space. As young inner-city professionals, many have uncertain career trajectories. There will be a lot more fluidity in the jobs that they do and the places that this work can now get done. They're tired of living at the whim of a landlord that can bump up rent, move into the property themselves, or sell the premises at any point in time. There's been a gradual shift towards greater protection of tenant rights, and build-to-rent properties attempt to better actualize these aspirations. As you'd be well aware, home ownership rates in Oz have been on the decline for a while, and an increasing number of those 2.1 million rental tenants that we discussed on the previous slide are those that have simply been priced out of the home purchase market. And finally, these young modern renters enjoy flexibility and optionality in all elements of their lifestyle and their choice of where they call home is no exception. So now that we've established who Build to Rent is targeting, let's quickly review what Build to Rent properties actually look like. What we're about to run through is not a sort of definitive shopping list of things that every Build to Rent project must have, but more so some of the common design, form, and lifestyle attributes that are characteristic of many Build to Rent projects. So as we touched on before, it's just as much about celebrating a lifestyle as it is about offering a physical space. For this reason, key drawcard amenities like gyms, cafes, and bars are built into the premises itself or located in the immediate vicinity around the property. They're frequently designated communal spaces intended to promote socialization amongst the residents. Think Melrose Place. These spaces are often used to put on events or provide extra facilities like barbecues, spas, and pools, as well as games rooms. Because of its appeal to young inner city professionals, there tends to be a predominance of studio and one-bedroom apartments. And because they're intended to be rented out for many decades, their aesthetics focus on timeless designs that are likely to remain agreeable throughout the ages. And for this reason, there's a frequent use of timber, stone, and brick materials. Because of the anticipated high occupant turnover, they often have things like dedicated service lifts and larger foyer and corridor dimensions. And for both operational reasons and to appeal to environmentally conscious tenants, environmental and energy efficient goals are brought to life wherever possible. They're frequently full-time or part-time staff that are on site, such as cleaning, maintenance, landscaping, and property and facilities management. Management treat the tenant much more like a customer than a renter. And I liken this to the service you get from the community manager working at a WeWork versus, say, the service you get by a facilities manager at, say, Australia Square. Sorry if there are any facility managers from Australia Square in this webinar. And finally, they're very tech heavy with lots of smart home gadgets and Internet of Things technologies like keyless access devices and remotely controlled appliances, thermostats, and lights. And just to add a tiny bit of color and context to what we're actually talking about, here are just a few images of some Build to Rent projects and properties. Now, we've been talking just now about Build to Rent here as if it were a foregone conclusion and current reality. But as many of you would be aware, Build to Rent is still very much in its early infancy, at least here in Australia, and not without a whole range of regulatory and taxation hurdles that need to be overcome before it becomes a true force to reckon with. Nonetheless, as real estate professionals, it's important that Build to Rent remains firmly on your radar. It's much more a question of when, not if. And you're going to be hearing a lot more about Build to Rent over the coming years and into the near future. So as its footprint in the Australian real estate landscape sizes up, it will increasingly represent a competitive threat to many of the strata investment properties managed within your portfolios. Real estate professionals, therefore, have an opportunity to emulate many of the key selling features of Build to Rent and gain a better understanding of the wants and needs of renters too. So the most obvious takeaway is also probably the least tangible, and that's adopting a new mindset that treats the tenant much more like a customer than a renter. Based on all the things we've discussed around design, form, and lifestyle features, discuss with owners opportunities for uplifting their properties with these amenities wherever appropriate. Understand the anxieties of renters around lease tenure volatility and tenant rights, and do everything in your power to alleviate these concerns. Place greater emphasis on lifestyle drawcards of the surrounding local area. And finally, some JLL research based in the UK found that on average, the premiums of Build to Rent accommodation was 11% over the respective local rental markets. that would be like paying $588 for the typical unit in Sydney, as opposed to $530 a week. So if pricing discrepancies fall in your favor, make sure to let the customer know about it. Thank you very much. If you have any questions after the webinar, please feel free to get in touch.
Thank you very much, Evian. It was very good, and as usual, great insights. One personal note about Evian. Evian is the guy that you copy from him slides. You know how you always kind of, when you build a presentation, you use other presentations. So for me, he's the guy. So thank you for that. I have a couple of questions for you, but I'll save it for the Q&A. And now, really looking forward to hearing from Rana. So Evian, if you can stop sharing, then Rana, you can share.
Right. There we go.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this webinar. And as a real estate agent, I think a lot of our participants today are real estate agents. So I wish to share some of my experience in the past 3-4 years managing a mix of both long-term rental and short-term rentals. So I'll just briefly introduce our company itself. So our company was founded in 2016, which is the traditional real estate agency, Landnest Real Estate, which we have sales and long-term rentals, and then Easy Host as part of our agency, but just managing short-term stays. So when we started the company, our focus is to do sales and short-term stays and try to combine these two together. However, on a later stage, there's a large demand of long-term stays. So we actually started to have like a mix of both in our portfolio. So a lot of the agents are actually curious about how we propose these options to the landlord and how we try to get the landlord to accept the short-term stay ideas. First of all, I want to say landlord is the key for our business. So we always let the landlord to decide what they want to do. When we propose to the landlord, we put the two contracts and two concepts in front of them. We tell them how each of them works and how the expected revenue is for their property. And we also offer them flexible options for the landlord to switch in between if their circumstances will change. A lot of the landlord are thinking of probably using the properties for themselves to live in for a certain period of time over the year. So short-term rental will be more suitable for them. And a lot of the landlords are looking to have like more stable income, and they don't want to have risks or any fluctuations during the year because they have to pay back their interest. So in this case, long-term rental will be more suitable for them. But of course, you always offer the flexible options for them. And for short-term landlords, don't set their expectations too high. That's very important because a lot of landlords, they actually imagine, because a lot of the rumors around the world saying that Airbnb will make you tons of money, and they're thinking of probably having twice as much revenues than the long-term rental, which is not always true. So you have to tell them the truth and put the figures in front of them. Try not to set their expectations too high. Otherwise, they come back and blame on you. And we always review with the landlord each half of the year and take initiatives if, say, the property is better off doing long-term or better off doing short-term. And we will take initiative and propose to the landlord, and if there's a need to switch in between. And how our company perform in the pandemic, I think a lot of the real estate agents are curious to know, because there's a big restriction on short stays in the past 6 months because we're based in Melbourne. So during the lockdowns, basically we can't do anything with the short-term stays. So, but our business didn't actually get affected a lot. I'll show you how it is. So looking at those two pie charts, in the pre-pandemic figures, that's in March. So we actually have 142 short-term stays properties in our portfolio, and we have 95 long-term properties. And post-pandemic, that's the figures that we have in November. So we quickly have 32 of the short-term stay properties back into our portfolio, but we have 165 long-term stay now, and there's still like 19, 20 properties still in discussion with the landlord. So you can see like a lot of the short-term landlords, they quickly actually come back to long-term at the very beginning of the pandemic. And 80-90% of the properties actually leased out in the first couple of weeks. So because the landlords are in our portfolio and we offer these flexible options, so the landlords are sticking with us. They're not leaving us. And when the pandemic's nearly finished, the landlords who likes short-term stays, they quickly come back to us again to do short-term stays. And a lot of of course, there are some landlords, the circumstances change, they move back to living themselves, and some of them, they just, there's still like a small amount of the landlords leaving us, but comparing to a company that's completely doing short-term stays, that you will see that we have 95% of the landlords actually coming back to us when the pandemic's finished. And how to maximize the revenues in between the seasons. And that's also a key topic I want to share about. I will show you a typical 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment and a typical 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment. These revenues, how they perform in over 1 year time. And the figures are actually using the Guesty's new advanced analytic systems. And you can see the typical 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment and the 3-bedroom apartment, they're actually performing quite well in between November time to March time. However, there's a significant drop between April to October. So that's actually quite common for the short-term stay market because that's the winter season, there's no holidays, and people, it's generally quieter during these seasons. And you can see in 2019, the 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment in the CBD actually have an average rent of $700 per week. And the 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment in the CBD actually can rent out for $1,000 per week in 2019. Of course, that's not the case in 2020, but I can't give you much figure at this point of time, but just give you a comparison in 2019. So to maximize the revenue, usually you can see that during these low seasons, the total revenue minus the cleaning costs and minus our management fees usually will be even lower than the long-term rentals. So we usually would propose to the landlord during these seasons to convert into long-term rentals. And these are the seasons when the international students are coming back. In late March, these are the enrollment times for universities. So actually, these are the high seasons for long-term rentals. Usually, you will get quite a good figure for long-term rental, can achieve higher than the average. And in October, November time, these are when the international students are going back to their home country for holidays. And these are the hot season for short stays to start. So we would propose like for the 6-7 month period of time to offer them a long-term options if the landlord think they're not generating enough revenues during these seasons for short stays. And of course, for Christmas time, January time, these are the hot season for short stays. You can't miss it. So for long-term landlords, and if they can't find tenants during Christmas times, we also propose them to convert into short stays and during these hot seasons. And always propose to the landlords before they ask, because they will appreciate your initiatives. And how we advertise during these transition periods, that's also very important, because we are real estate agents. We also offer the traditional way, and we offer the short stay platform way to advertise these properties as well. So realestate.com and domain, these are the traditional ways to advertise long-term properties. But of course, you have to take advantage of these new platforms such as Airbnb, Booking.com. Just offer a long stay discount or special monthly price for long-term bookings, or maybe just to eliminate those 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 days, 3 days bookings, starting with 1 month, 2 months. that's also a good way to generate more tenants for long-term stays. And I'll also share with you some tips which I found quite useful for the properties that are often used in transition in between short terms and long terms. First of all, sign up internet service with no lock-in contracts, because often you will have to cancel it and join it and cancel it and join it. And if you don't sign up with a no lock-in contract, it will actually accumulate quite a big number of penalties. And also be close with some utility providers to waive the connection fees and cancellation fees, because you will have to do that quite a lot. And always prepare a rental agreement template, which you will find quite useful, because once you convert into long terms, you have to cancel some of the future bookings in order to waive the penalties. You have to have the rental agreement prepared on hand. So that will help you a lot. And I think that's quite easy for the traditional real estate agents to prepare it. And use the king convertible beds rather than just normal single beds, because you will find the long-term tenants, they don't like single beds. They will ask you to move the furniture, which landlord and us real estate agents, we don't want these hassles. And if you have no idea of furniture, you can also ask us to help you, because we do offer that kind of service as well. So also what we can offer you for real estate agents who doesn't have any experience in short stays, we can help you to start with some furniture setup service, or you can use our day-to-day customer support service. We also offer full management service if you want. And that's my contact details, and contact me if there's anything that you need. And even just for questions, simple questions like how to start with short-term stays, I would also like to share with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rana. It's so important for us to understand how things are working from your end, because we are the short-term rental guys, but it's not always the right time, the right area, the right project for short-term. And you mentioned kind of the movement between long-term to short-term. So it's very kind of, it's a very good information for us to have. So thank you very much for sharing with us. I'll quickly jump now into a few questions. So while we have you on the mic, Rana, I might start kind of with you. And I'll start with one of the questions that I wanted to ask you. So our data shows significant increase in last minute booking. So we spoke about it, Kellen touched it a bit about that as well. Significant increase in last minute booking in recent months. Given this, and everything that you mentioned now on the operational side, what should property management companies expect this holiday season?
Okay. So we actually expect this holiday season to be better than ever, because people has been locked down at home for too long and they're craving for travel. So last minute bookings, that's normal, because even for myself, when I try to book something now, I wouldn't book too much ahead, because we don't know what's going to happen in the next couple months, if there's another coming back lockdown or not. If the area I'm traveling to, if there's going to be another few cases or so. So I would never do like a book ahead thing at the moment. So last minute bookings, like within a week time, probably we're seeing more often at the moment. And for property managers at this point of time, we have to be always prepared for last minute bookings. And you have to have your staff trained to accept those last minute bookings and know how to react. And the preparation times for the properties has to be faster in order to generating maximum yield for the landlords. And also people are more care about the COVID-19 and the cleanliness and how your safety measures are taken. So these are also a big factor to take into consideration when preparing those properties. Also, Guesty has launched a very useful check-in form, because a lot of the property managers are actually concerned about last-minute bookings for party peoples. So the check-in form that Guesty launched in the last couple of months actually would helped quite a lot, because your guest has to fill that form before they check in, and if you put inside with your automated systems, and actually will maximize the efficiency. You don't have to ask again and again for the guests to provide their IDs and all these kind of things. So that's also another thing that helped a lot with the last minute bookings.
Thank you very much for that. And yeah, we're kind of you mentioned that kind of you expect a travel to boom. We see, we call it travel revenge.
Oh, yes.
People want to get out. I've seen also the other day there was a survey, a study that Hilton did, and they were talking there about people that want to create memories, haven't traveled for a while and they want to create new memories. So very interesting kind of to see how summer will turn out to be here. You touched kind of the automation bit with the check-in form. Thanks for that. I want to ask Evian, just on that kind of automation and tech adoption, what type of technology services has been the most prominent among your users, Padlifter's users? Any trends that you can see there and share?
Yeah, sure, Yov. So on the Padlifter website, we have 32 different categories of short-term rental products and services. And of these, the vast majority incorporates some element of a tech component, kind of one way or another. On one end of the spectrum, we have sort of pure technology companies, and examples of these are the sort of home automation products like keyless entry and smart home monitoring devices that we've been talking about, price optimization technology like, Kellen was just talking about, and our friends at AirDNA provide, and property management software companies such as Guesty yourselves. In, I guess, the middle, a blended kind of solutions that have both a human element mixed with some kind of tech component. And examples of these would be the sort of like on-demand services like real estate photography, laundry services, and, on-demand luggage storage. And then on the very other end of the spectrum, we have non-tech service providers like handymen, tax and accounting services, and bed, bath, furniture, and homeware products. But what's interesting even about this last category, though, is that even though these non-tech service providers are not they're actually not 100% offline per se. So in the past, whereas customers would find these kind of services in the good old yellow pages, now they're scoping them out online through platforms like Padlifter, reviewing their Trustpilot and Google reviews ratings on the web, watching YouTube videos about who they are and what they do, and contacting them via instant messages across their social channels. So in that respect, tech has impacted the entire short-term rental ecosystem one way or another. And just to bring that back to the conversation we're having today, I think this actually has some implications and lessons, not just for the short-term rental industry per se, but also for real estate professionals too. So for them, they should take note of the tech solutions that their customers are actually looking out for and appreciate. Understand how technology can actually be utilized to enhance an offline offering too, and also learn how to use the technology to connect and communicate with their customers via their preferred methods of interaction and communication.
Thank you, and just kind of thanks for also kind of linking it to the real estate professional, because that's kind of linked to my question to Kellen. How can real estate professionals, developers, use the data, your data, to gauge the value of new acquisition and improve the short-term rental returns?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's three pieces, and I spoke a little bit to the tools that we provide that you can do this with. But the first is prospecting and finding that location. They say location, location, location when buying real estate. I think that's more important now than ever, particularly with what's happening with the pandemic. People aren't traveling to cities as much and at the same till. And so I think understanding what real-time data can tell us about those locations and about where the new best place to invest is, and improve cash flows. So using that data to improve cash flows, and also just looking at future trends as well, tapping into the future bookings for a market, and really understanding and applying the consumer sentiment, not just today, but for the next 6, 12, 24 months, because as we know, this pandemic is long from over.
And is kind of you spoke about kind of the pandemic. Why is now a good time to invest in the, short-term rentals? So with all of those kind of with this risk associated with that?
Yeah, of course. So I think the current climate and just the traveler behaviors that we've seen just tell us that cleanliness is so important. Safety, travel restrictions has changed, the way that travelers think, the way they feel, which is so important. And of course, where they're spending money and booking travel. And so it's pretty clear that hotels are out for the moment, at least, and vacation rentals, short-term rentals are in. And so I think more than any time ever before, it's really lended itself, especially in the data, telling us that travelers really want to stay in vacation rentals, and they trust and feel like it's a reliable area to travel and be nomads. To your question about risk, I think there's a couple of things we have to think about. If you are investing heavily in short-term rentals right now, I think Rana offers up some pretty good ideas in terms of diversifying. Particularly some investors I know are trying to stay invested both in long-term real estate and short-term rental real estate, and I think that's because there could be future outbreaks that happen. We don't know. I know here in Los Angeles, we just shut down restaurants starting Friday for the next, at least 30 days. And so not knowing where these pandemic outbreaks are going to happen next really poses risk. And also, I think the vaccine, there's been a ton of good news across the wire the last 2 weeks with regard to the vaccine. And that could both impact short-term rentals because people might be willing to shift back to the hotel product, but it also could just not getting a vaccine could pose risks in terms of folks not being able to travel at all and being locked up even longer.
Thank you. One last question, because we're kind of a bit out of kind of past our time. I want to finish with a question for you, Avian. You recently published a new book, coming back from COVID. Any relevant tips that you can share with the audience?
Yeah, sure. My book covers lots of different tips and tricks to help businesses navigate their way out of the pandemic and get back onto a path of growth, profitability, and prosperity. But I guess at the end of the day, most of these things just represent, in many ways, a return back to basics and some business fundamental 101s that are equally relevant to property management companies and real estate professionals too. So to begin with, I'd suggest focusing on quick wins, like asking for referrals to win new customers. In contrast to other marketing and sales tactics, these leads from referrals tend to be better quality, convert more readily, typically faster to close. They're almost always cheaper to acquire in marketing costs. And since they're more likely to become repeat customers, end up having a higher lifetime value to your business as well. Secondly, I'd suggest focusing on using buyer personas to better understand their customers. And again, we've sort of talked about that in a roundabout way with getting into the shoes of the modern day renters. So now more than ever, many of the traditional assumptions that you may have held about your customer may be in some ways obsolete. Your customers may carry new pain points that need to be addressed. They may possess new value drivers that need to be considered. They might act according to new behaviors and preferences that need to be recognized. So really building a richer understanding of your customers is the logical starting point for navigating through these challenging times. And I'd suggest that this is best achieved by creating buyer personas, which is kind of what we've done, in our previous discussion, where you create fictitious avatars of your target customers that will help you conceptualize them as real human beings with, individualized needs and wants. And just as a final suggestion, focus on improving your processes, as Yoav touched upon before in many ways with the automation stuff, to achieve efficiency gains. So look at your business and be on the lookout for processes that are, repetitive or time consuming or complicated or frustrating or variable in their nature, and sort of take a step back, document the existing steps, brainstorm improvements with a focus on automation, ensure you're adequately resourced to implement the new process, and then just make sure to periodically review and adapt as necessary.
Thank you very much. And on that note, I want to thank the three of you for joining us and for contribute your time and brains. It was very, very interesting and insightful. Thank you also for the audience that joined us. We are going to send the recording and everything kind of to you and a summary of the session, so you expect kind of to get it. We are here for any question. We have now also kind of, for those who would like to join us, a new offer for especially for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And thank you very much. I hope that you enjoyed and found it useful. Thank you.